explain to me what a forensic artist is.
Forensic artist is somebody that sits down with victims, witnesses, redoes sketches of suspects or person of interest that they saw during a crime. A lot of times we actually have skeletal remains that we don't have IDs on, so we'll take those and basically put a face on a skull.
And what are the different, I see you have, the skull and obviously the sculpting and then pictures. What are the sort of different mediums of artistry that you use to do that?
As far as like pencil and clay and that's pretty much my bread and butter is pencil and paper. A lot of things like our age progressions we can actually do on the computer through Adobe Photoshop. They can also be done with pencil and paper, but as far as the reconstructions, we use erasers, which is what these little things are here, and clay, and you actually build up a face.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
Since 2005. Started in January.
How'd you get started?
It's kind of funny, actually. I would do sketches of officers if a funny situation would happen. I would sketch up that kind of scene, and I'd give it to them as like a little gift. And then rumor got around, hey, she can draw. We have a previous artist that we already have on the department, and he said, hey, I can use the help. So he came down and said, hey, are you willing to do this? And at first I said no. I thought everything was computerized. I never really drew faces before in my life, so I said, I'll think about it. And just started sketching, and he said, well, let me see what you have. From there, just kind of got the ball rolling. He introduced me into the forensic art field. I fell in love with it, and just every training opportunity I had to jump on it, I did. So, and here I am now, just working cases.
So once he got you interested in this, what kind of training did you have to go through?
I started under him at first, where I would take old cases with old descriptions, and I just produce composites, what I thought that person or that victim was trying to say. And then I would compare my sketch to his sketch. What am I doing wrong? Where am I faltering? From there, I kind of moved on my own. I trained underneath Karen Taylor. She's well known in the field. She's out of Texas, actually. She's actually the author of this book here. And it's kind of like, in my terms, my Bible that I go by. She's out in Oklahoma, and that was kind of a huge foundation for me as far as doing composites. And she introduced me into Betty Pat Gatliff. Betty Pat is a skull reconstructionist. She used to be a medical illustrator or whatever. So she said in order to make better composites, you might want to understand the bone and the muscles underneath and how they interact. And for example, if somebody says, oh, you're drawing a composite, it looks like the person, but you need to age them. How do you do that? And that was the kind of the training that I needed. And for an example, that would be if you would put wrinkles on somebody to make them look older, you have to know that the wrinkle is actually perpendicular to a muscle. So if you know how the muscles run on the face, adding that kind of detail, it looks natural, it looks realistic, as opposed to somebody just guessing and throwing it on paper. So once I kind of got the foundation as far as muscles and bones, I started training in all the fields that I could, mainly sticking to pencil and paper. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a program that they do with the age progressions, the Have You Seen Me posters. Started training in that field as well. So everything that kind of comes up, if there's anthropology classes, understanding the bone is critical, especially with 2D and 3D cases. So any kind of classes that are out there. One big thing that we have is an organization called the IAI, International Association for Identification. And right now that's the only place to really get a week's worth of training in one spot where a whole bunch of forensic artists just kind of come together and we learn off of each other. And it's very open, and right now it's the only program that can certify in the field. So it's...
How many certified officers, forensic artists are there in Maryland?
Maryland, there's 2. So myself, and there's a sergeant down in Charles County. As far as nationally, we have about roughly 26 certified at this time.
That's not very many.
No, it's not. But we are here, and we're all willing to help. So.
Well, I would imagine with that small number that you probably get a fair amount of cases, since it's not spread around that much. How many would you say you get in a year?
I would say close to 25 to 30 composites a year. Skull reconstructions, there isn't that many. Since 2005, I've done 6. But luckily, I'm fortunate enough to be very close to the morgue, so I have access to the skeletal remains if they need it. So.
How many from Maryland would you say you get?
I think out of the 6, I've done 5 for Maryland.
And what's the farthest you've gotten a call from?
Pennsylvania. That was for skull reconstruction. I help out. I definitely do, obviously, county cases, but the neighboring jurisdictions, Baltimore City, if they need one, I get calls from them all the time as well.
So with the the skulls, what's the first thing you do? I mean, that's a sample skull, so I'm sure they don't come that perfectly intact. So what's the first step?
First, you have to assemble it, put it together. Majority of the time, they come in 2 to 3 pieces, especially with the autopsy. Once it's glued together, I need to know what I have. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't pretend to be one. I hire, I have a girl I work with named Dana Coleman. She's a doctor of forensic anthropology. She'll take the skull and she'll look at it and she goes, "This is what you have. Is it a black male, a white male?" Give me an age range of pretty much what I have. And then from there, I start gluing on what's called tissue death markers, which is these white pins, so to speak, that are on the skull. There's 21 points. So no matter what I have, whether it's male or female, or no matter what race, it's always going to be 21 points. There's a chart that I go off of that it measures out based on age and race, and they get glued on. And then from that point, you're just basically reading the bones, so to speak, just how things kind of lay out on the face. And you start using clay if I'm doing a 3D, or if I'm doing 2D, which is kind of along the same lines where I take the skull, put the pins on, and then it's actually photographed and what's called the Frankfurt horizontal plane positioning, which is just a fancy way of saying how the head looks at you in real life. It's not tilted down or tilted up because it can distort. And then from there, I just do a drawing.
How long does it take you to put one of these together?
I would say by the time I get done gluing, it's at least probably 2 days worth of putting everything together and setting everything in, and then I have an anthropologist look it over. As far as the clay, I could take easily 40 to 60 hours. A drawing, probably a week, 8 hours a day a week.
What are some different things that you've learned from the forensic artists as far as how they judge, where the eyebrow would be, or how big or small the nose would be, or the cheekbones and all that other stuff?
Okay, the eye is kind of simple. It pretty much sits center of the orbit. These tissue depth markers, 12 and 13, usually if you were to take a ruler and you line the ruler up between the two so it's even, that's kind of like how far the eye actually sets out. As far as the nose, you want to look at the whole thing as a whole, how wide the aperture is. There's this little bone that sticks out right here. It's called the nasal spine. Measurements are taken off of that. There's a bone that runs down in the middle. It's called the vomer. I don't think this one has it. Actually, it does. It runs down the middle. It separates the two. Where the vomer stops, that's where you start your measurement to the end of the nasal spine. You take a look at how long the nasal bone actually is. And there's different calculations that you can put into, and it tells you this is basically what it's going to look like. The mouth. You ever hear of smiling teeth? It's usually like your first 6 teeth. So generally, you want to come over 3 on either side to make the width. As far as the height, CEJ to CEJ, which is the gum line. So you could pretty much base the mouth where it's going to set a relation to the nose and to the eye sockets, pretty much. So.
Now, I know you're a police officer and you've probably seen, blood and guts and all that stuff, but what was it like for you, as a young woman sitting down with your first skull to do one of these?
It was a little overwhelming, actually. I was scared to death about messing it up. The calculations are so tedious. You have to be, I don't want to say perfect because there's no such thing as perfect, but you want to be as close to perfect as you can. So it's intimidating. When I started training, I worked on fake skulls. This one's fake here. So the intimidation, the getting over what I have versus what I need to do kind of helps out. But it was also exciting. You finally get to really help somebody that needs the help and needs ID. So it's kind of mixed emotions.
What is your background in art? You said before that you were always sort of a drawer as a kid.
Yes, I drew all the time. I went to community colleges even when I was in elementary school. On weekend classes, I would sign up and go. Maryland Institute, I took when I was in elementary school as well. I went to a high school that specialized in art, and that's pretty much as far as my training. Other than learning from other forensic artists in the field, I don't really have a whole lot of art background, but I practiced enough. I drew all the time that I felt comfortable in the drawing. So.
All right. A lot of these cases, these skulls, obviously they can't be perfect, and that's, some people nationally think, well, why bother with these if it's not going to look exactly like it? On the other hand, it solved a lot of cases. Can you just talk about that issue and
Sure.
your opinion on it?
No matter what I do, 2D, 3D, a composite, they're never going to be exact. They're never going to be a portrait because I've never seen this person before. They've never been in front of me. The key to what we want to try to do is get a likeness of what that person looks like. You ever hear, like, especially with brothers and sisters, they could say, oh, you look like so-and-so, or you could tell you're related. That's the kind of goal that we're trying to get towards. Somebody, the whole point of what I'm doing is to generate a phone call. So for somebody to say, I think I know that person, let me call it in. And then from there, that's where the investigation kind of starts going, you know, the calls start coming in, we can start running with leads. But yeah, it's not gonna be perfect. I don't think any science is. So.
Have you seen, just with yourself and your sort of coworker at the station, some successes from this sort of technology?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, especially in the field. I'm in contact with a lot of the forensic artists because our unit is so small, there's not many of us out there, that we share cases all the time and we'll see hits. And they're close. It's enough to say, yeah, I think it could be this person. So it works. We're here, and it definitely works.
Who pays for this sort of? I mean, if you're spending, 40, 60 hours doing something, is this something, do you guys get grants for this sort of thing? Is it something that Baltimore County takes care of? I mean, it's a very labor-intensive medium.
It's kind of we kind of all play together, so to speak. A lot of times I'll pay out of pocket for materials. As far as doing majority of my casework, it's done on county time, so the county is paying me to sit down with the victims and do sketches and work on some of the composites. As far as training, the county, they try to pay as much as they can. If they can't afford it, which I understand, times are tight, I'll pay out of pocket. Last year there was a grant that actually pulled through and paid for one of my trainings. So it's kind of, as each year comes by, how much money do we have? The money's not going to stop me. If the training's there, I'll pay.
You just love it that much.
I do. I wish I could do this full time.
And as you know, I'm going to be talking to Detective Marl about, Jane and John Doe cases. To me, Jane and John Does are just incredibly difficult to solve, you know nothing about them except what their skull looks like. It's not, or even less than that sometimes if they're that decomposed.
Right.
What kind of responsibility do you feel when you're holding a skull and knowing, this is someone's child? Right.
I feel like I'm the last hope, because obviously when you come across things like that, you try to do dental charts, you try to do the DNA. Unfortunately, if you have a body that was, so to speak, dumped in a neighborhood, they could be from anywhere. So where do you start? If you have dental records, but where do you start? So I feel like it's a lot of responsibility on me to at least put a face on the skull to say, who is this person, can you help me? From there, like I said, when the leads start coming in, we could take that name you're giving us and run with it and start doing comparisons with that name and getting DNA from that person to confirm it. But it's hard. It really is hard. You're already batting 1,000 to begin with a lot of the skeletal cases, because why aren't they reported missing? What are we missing as a department as far as why can't we get this person named? So it is hard.
I think just making sure. Yeah, I think we're good. Is there anything I haven't touched that you want to talk about or anything like that?
I kind of want to touch base as far as the public coming forward.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
One of the big things that I feel that I need to have in order to get these cases done is to have the witnesses and the victims out there to step forward. A lot of the people don't know that us artists are here. For example, yesterday my husband just showed me a case where a victim or a witness actually sat down and did their own sketch, and it actually went into the newspaper. We're here, we can help. Don't be afraid if you recognize somebody on TV of a sketch that, even if you're thinking, I'm not sure, still at least call. We can gives us a way to look, gives us a lead to look into. So don't be afraid to step forward.
The victim who did the sketch, what would she have done? What should she have done as far as getting a hold of you? What would be something that would be her first step if she needed something?
She can definitely let the officer, the patrol guy, or the detective know, hey, I think I know this person well enough, or I can remember this person well enough that I could put their face on paper. From that point up, it's up to the department to say, hey, we have sketch artists. They are local. I'm here. I'll help anybody. We need to call them and get in here. If you have somebody, especially a witness, that can start doing their own drawing, that's the type of people I need. Ask yourself, do I think I could remember what this guy looked like? Could I pick him out in the future? And the answer is yes. Come forward. We'll try to do a sketch. It doesn't hurt. I mean, if you can't do it, you can't do it, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Okay, great. One of the things I'll probably probably pop up when we're out in the studio. Anyway.
Would it be worth asking if any cases that were really gratifying that you were able to resolve some high-profile cases, perhaps that you guys were able to help be part of that puzzle? You know, solving that puzzle.
Right. I've done more sketches as far as getting the gratification back, as far as a 2D or a 3D. Sketches, I don't want to say a pretty good success rate, but at least probably a third have got ID'd. They could definitely separate. We had two similar crimes going on the east side of the county and the west side of the county. And originally we thought they were all related, but when I sat down with the victims, did a sketch here and did a sketch there, we realized, you know what, they're two completely different sketches. They're two different people that we're dealing with. And to be able to even help, even assist as little as that may be, that there's two people out there and not one, that's huge too. If you could bring kids home, if you can catch the people that, I don't know how many people have been victims of crimes, but you know how it feels, and you want that person caught to help in that process is huge.
And I forgot that we hadn't asked you this on camera, but you know, I want you to comment again on how young you are, and is this something you plan on doing for the rest of your career? Because you have a long career ahead of you.
Oh yeah, I do. I still have another. I'm probably halfway through my career, so I'm going to forever do it. Even when I'm long gone from the department, I plan on doing this. I'm always going to be here. So, yes. Okay, as far as putting everything together, putting the face on, you want to look at the sockets that you have: the eye sockets, the nose, the mouth. For the nose calculations, your nose is going to be actually the most well recognized. If you look at it, you go by what the aperture is here, about how wide. This is called the nasal spine. It stops at where the vomer actually comes down and stops and meets up with the nasal spine. You want to measure that out. The nasal bone itself, you want to look at it as a whole. You can actually calculate the nose. It's the most accurate feature on the face. The eyes, they pretty much set center in the sockets. The mouth, you want to use pretty much the first 6 teeth, and that's where the mouth is actually as wide. As far as, you can actually see on real skulls, like I said, this one doesn't exactly show it that well, but you can see a coloration from where the gum line actually stopped and where the teeth begin. It's called CEJ to CEJ, and it tells you pretty much how wide your mouth is. So that's the key things that I look for when working on a sketch.
What do you hope the public, when they see this image, is able to sort of tune out and focus on?
I would definitely tune out any kind of clothes in the hair, the eyebrows, the hair, kind of tune out. Look at the face and the relationship from the eyes to the nose to the mouth. That's the key with identification. For example, if you're in a mall somewhere walking, you can't tell details from somebody 15 stores away, but you may be able to say, oh, I know that person, that's so-and-so. At that distance, you can't tell the little details that I have in here. What you're looking at is the layout of the face. You ever hear somebody say, oh, you look like the singer Pink? It's because of the layout of your face is probably pretty close to what hers is. So if something like the layout of this person's face is striking you, that you know it could be so-and-so, may not be exact. Like I said, some things are guesswork, it's artistic. At least try and give us a call.